Today I'm going to make a winter wonder landscape with Christmas trees. I'm using a brush called Stripex from Nikolai Lockertson's brush set on Gumroad. This is my go-to brush for trees, fur, ground textures, any campsites I have to draw, wood, walls, or floorboards. I highly recommend you check out his work. He's an incredible concept artist. I used the selection tool to select the shape of the mounds, then I made masks out of the selections and used soft brushes to create soft gradients of mounds of snow. I use a smudge tool to soften the edges of the mounds of snow to create a more natural appearance. I decided to do some Christmas trees in the background using a different technique. Similarly to how I shaped the mounds initially, I am using the selection tool to rough in a general outline of a Christmas tree, then turning that into a mask, and using a soft brush, I'm brushing in a soft gradient of that shape. I do the same on the other side. A rough tree outline selection followed by a soft gradient. This is a subtle way to create a little bit of sense of atmosphere and to push those trees into the further background. Here I'm quickly throwing in a gradient because even if it's a completely cloudless, clear sky, it has to have a gradient. Now I'm implementing that same selection mask technique as before to add a solid gradient behind the tree texture. I soften just a few of the edges of this mask before moving on to adjusting the tree texture layer. I'm lowering the opacity, and then I spend a good deal of time looking through the different brushes I have available to decide what brush I want to use to create my garland. I test out a few before finally deciding on this leafy textured brush. Now I'm going through and looping the garland around the tree. I go for a little bit more of an organic line as I'm not looking to make perfect loops. Similar to the wreath drawing, my approach is to create kind of a messy texture throughout the entire tree that will end up looking good once it all comes together in the end. Now I'm going to make my first Christmas ball by using the selection tool to create a circle, and then I make a mask out of that circle selection. Now you could just paint in a circle and then use clippy masks over it. That's totally fine too. I use masks because it's kind of a habit from the other work I do where I need to create a non-destructive and editable base layer for my shading. The highlights you're seeing me do are on a layer above my base layer that's set to clipping mask. That way I can draw any highlights without worrying about going outside the lines. I duplicate the highlights layer a few times and use the Gaussian blur filter to smooth out the highlights and adjust opacity until I'm satisfied with the amount of glow and shininess that the ball has. I do my final touches and then I duplicate the entire group, flatten it, and now I'm able to duplicate these singular Christmas balls and decorate the entire tree. I place them all around and just kind of eyeball where I want to put them. They're all about an equal amount away from each other. When I'm happy with where they're placed, I put them all into one group and flatten them. I drew this tree right after I finished decorating my family's actual Christmas tree, so I used a lot of the same principles when I was approaching this drawing. Just have fun with it, don't think about it too much, try to make something that looks like a gorgeous mess. That's really all a Christmas tree is. Now I'm moving on to the beads. This amazing bead brush was created by True Grit Texture Supply, and this brush was included in a free sample pack provided when you sign up for their email list. And it's just wild to me that they're giving this out for free, along with some other amazing brushes that I use all the time. Then I go about decorating the garland a little bit more by adding some sparkles. For this, I'm using a single point stippler brush from True Grit Texture Supply. I overlay them on top of the garland as if the lights are intertwined, and then I duplicate the sparkly layer multiple times using Gaussian blur to add a glow at different strengths until I'm satisfied with the amount of glowiness. Now I've put all of my sparkly layers into a group just to stay organized, and then I move on to the Christmas tree topper, which in this case is a classic star. I probably could have used the symmetry tool in Procreate to create a perfectly symmetrical star for the topper, but I wanted something a little bit more natural. The idea is that there's a lot of different textures and a lot of different shapes going on, so it's not super necessary to get too precious with any particular ornament unless it's important to telling the story of your illustration. Because at the end of the day, the tree look is just the overall shape and atmosphere of the tree as a whole tree. For this tree, the only ornament that I really spend some time detailing is the star. I do that because it's the only star there is, it's the top of the tree, and it's a focal point of the illustration. And I think that's a good takeaway for any illustration. If you're creating something that has a lot of decorations like this, then keep focused on the bigger picture. Otherwise, it's way too easy to get totally caught up on the details. Every little ball, every little bead, every little light, and it'll take you forever to finish the drawing. So instead, focus on the bigger picture, focus on creating a fun textural array, and save your detail work for the moments that matter most to telling the story in your illustration. Now I'm adding a shadow underneath the tree to make it feel like it's sitting in that space a little bit better. We don't want the Christmas tree to feel like it's just floating around in the snow. We want it to feel grounded. Then I go to my layers of lights and sparkles, and I duplicate those and throw them into the background. This is just a really quick and easy way to add detail and decoration to our background Christmas trees. I just went through and added atmosphere with a white soft brush. And now I'm going to use a Distress Press Speckle Sparse brush to create a snowy winter wonderland. I duplicate this layer and add a bit of Gaussian blur. Here I'm going through and actually erasing some of the snowflakes that are covering up my main tree too much. And then that's it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial series that I've created based on super popular requests that I've had from clients during the holiday season. All of the props that I've drawn, these are really popular items around the holidays, and the principles and approach that I use to create the textures and the lighting and shadows can be used across the board for any illustration. I'm still very much a new YouTuber, and I learned a lot about making YouTube videos by creating this series. Wishing you warmth and peace and curiosity and openness to learning new things, and a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all. See you next time.